Just wanted to talk about music today. This whole thing of like cringe, especially in nu metal, and that juxtaposition between nu metal and say pop music. The eternal war, as they put it, and the results of which. See, a lot of people will kind of label nu metal as cringe, and you know what? It's probably because of the type of music, the type of scene that surrounds it, and also the lyrics of these songs. It's not necessarily an inaccessible like genre, but at the same time, it's disconnected enough from pop that people, if they are not, you know, hugely into that type of music, slightly like just basically rock, but from a slightly heavier bass line. Like it's still very accessible, to be honest. It's not an inaccessible genre, but regardless, we're getting off topic. People see it as cringe, right? You know, whole like Linkin Park Numb, people kind of like, oh, on the one hand, it's a great song. On the other hand, people, some of them find it really cringe. Now, made a video about this the other day. It doesn't really matter what other people think. Certainly when it comes to music, just enjoy it. But again, that's off topic. We're talking today about the juxtaposition between pop music and nu metal. And so, taking, for example, Adele's Hello, which is a gut-wrenching song about her basically failing a relationship, trying to apologize and not being able to get that apology across because, well, she just can't reach the other person, right? Now, take that for example. That was a huge pop song. Certainly in the UK, that was like, you heard that everywhere. And it was really accessible. It was on all the radios. It was in shops. It was just everywhere, right? And it's a heartfelt song. It's an emotional song. However, if you compare that then to Broken Mirror by Architects, which is basically the same message in a song, but from a nu metal perspective, it's less played. Now, this obviously is because, to an extent, Architects are not as big of an artist as Adele. That is just the baseline. And because nu metal is automatically not as big of a genre as pop music, goes without saying. So those are the two qualifiers. So, that's one reason why this hasn't done as well. But the other reason is because people will constantly take like Architects, Linkin Park, Bring Me the Horizon, System of a Down even, and they'll look at these and say, oh, these guys are really cringe, man. And well, what do they actually mean by this? Well, it's again, this emotional disposition expressed through nu metal for some reason is seen as cringeworthy. You see it throughout media sometimes, where someone is opening up, someone is expressing themselves, and it results in criticism. See, on the one hand, we're in a generation now, we're in a time zone where it is more acceptable to talk about your emotions. Mental health issues, mental health awareness has increased hugely over the last 40 years because they've been diagnosed more readily and people are more readily to talk about it. And it's societally accepted that this is actually something that does exist on a larger scale and not just some kind of peripheral side notes where it's just someone's ill in the head and they need help. It's actually been generally accepted that this is just the human condition expressing itself. Now, the results of which are, there is a technical acceptance of emotions in public. However, if it's expressed in certain ways, it's seen as attention-seeking or it's seen as cringe. Now, again, this word cringe is a really bad word to explain things because it's not actually saying anything. It's like the word weird. It just means it's different, but in a negative light, basically. And so what they mean really by saying, like, I don't know, Linkin Park's cringe or the Architects are cringe, not the Architects, sorry, just Architects are cringe, is really what they're saying. It's different and they're expressing things that make the listener uncomfortable. They make you uncomfortable for some reason. And it's a shame because it is expressing very similar things to pop music, and maybe the pop music is just more relatable, which is why people listen to it, Maybe it's most popular because it is more relatable to the general audience. Maybe more people can relate to Adele's Heartthrob than they can relate to Linkin Park's Numbness, and the results of which could just be shown in the charts that way organically. You'd also have to look at maybe just the style of music. Adele's is very much vocal driven. Her talent is for all to see. She is an incredible vocalist. Let's not take that away from her. But when you look at, say, Chester's got an incredible voice, rest his soul. And, maybe it's just the type of music then that is putting people off. Or is it the way it's expressed and the repetition of the way it's expressed? See, throughout Linkin Park's albums, one thing that's been consistent, even up to this new one, which is a kind of Linkin Park 1.5 almost, it's close enough. So it's decent, but we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the actual messages that are expressed. It's been basically the same thing throughout all the albums. And while they have changed a little bit, it's generally that of a lack of hope, it's that of a lack of happiness, and it's that of a lack of kind of determination. It's basically the expression of surviving rather than living. It's the expression of getting your way through, but kind of having a bad time doing so. And maybe people just don't like listening to that, versus Adele, who's heartbreaking and it's that real cathartic listen. Whereas nu metal, certainly to that extent, the non-violent nu metal, is just quite depressing to listen to rather than cathartic, you could argue. So maybe that's another reason. Another reason on top of that is most likely the fact that you get people that do express emotion. This is not related to pop or to nu metal. There's an artist called Logic, Bobby Hall, and he was on stage performing one time and had a mental breakdown. And for weeks after, he was trolled. Even now, to this day, he gets trolled about that, kind of expressing emotion on stage, being overwhelmed, which he was performing to like over 70,000 people. That is a lot of people, and it's understandable how you can kind of have that real kind of breakdown. And that's something that's been shown in pop too. You might have seen the new Robbie Williams film, Better Man. Superb film, by the way, go watch it. Here's a, multiple times during that film, he expressed the fact that he was very, very close to having mental breakdowns on stage. It's just something that people have. And so resultantly, you can see from this that, yeah, while these are different ways of expressing emotion, a lot of these artists actually do experience the same emotion, it's just the way it's expressed. And to an extent, then expressing it is seen as tryharding, doing too much, or being cringe. But on the other hand, it's seen as pure art. And it's truly down then, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. In the same way that art is subjective and it is up to the individual who is then kind of seeing it, consuming it, to make their mind up of, is this too much? Is this, maybe, do you only listen to 2 Linkin Park songs and then skip to certain other artists because otherwise it's too repetitive and it's too, samey? Or do you really enjoy it and you can't stand Adele or whatever it might be? And it's ultimately down to the individual to make up their mind. But the one thing that has to be said is that there has been a time in music where it was cool to not try. The late 2010s, early 2000s, it was cool to not try with music. And that's lame, right? And so one thing that can be said about both these artists, both these genres, and both these emotional kind of outlets is that they are trying, and they are expressing something. They're putting something on the page that takes gall. And it's so easy to pull that down, because you yourself have never made anything worth anything. And so it's easy for you to say, oh, Adele or Linkin Park, you're huge, bit jealous, gonna just start throwing rocks at your house, and it's a shame it has to be done, but it's something that will always happen because that's the nature of it. But it does take balls and it does take genuine cojones to put stuff out like that, and credit to them, to be fair. That's what can be said, and not trying is not cool. Especially in music, not trying is not cool. You're not nonchalant, you're just not trying. It's nice that the pop music now, it's still not personal kettle of fish, but it's good. It's good. It's better. It's actually in a state now where people are trying to an extent, and it sounds less like hospital ward music, and it's starting to sound a bit more like it was. And this isn't even rose-tinted glasses, this is just pop music during the late 2010s was tepid. And on that note, that's that. Cheers. Thanks for watching.